Testing here. Let me know if you can hear me. Test. All right, there we go. We'll get started right at 6 on the dot here. So I'm going to go through the strategy I used with the BT Cloud, Golden Zone, Orb, what strike to pick, and then after that we can go over some questions and answers. So if you can't hear anything, make sure when you click the audio that the speaker is going to the right output because I noticed on mine it defaults to the wrong output. I have to switch that over. Good afternoon, everybody. We can go ahead and get started with the session here. What I use for my strategy, so there's 4 keys that I like to use. The BT Cloud, which you can see here. We're just looking at the 1 hour chart, the BT Cloud. I use the Golden Zone. We'll go over that later on what to look for. The orb, we're looking at our 15 or 30-minute orb to establish direction of the trend. And then which strike to pick when you're trading options. So to start, what I like to do is look at the big picture here, like the daily chart, just to see where we're at on the trend. Let's see where we have a red BT cloud here. So if we're trading in the direction of the trend, we do want to look more towards puts just based off the strategy when we're trading in that direction. Best entry is right when that BT cloud flips. That's a big reason why I haven't been trading too many puts down here because I like to take an entry near the highs, like right when the BT cloud flips is my favorite entry, which happened a little over 2 weeks ago. Now we're extended below the cloud. Right now, I'm just kind of waiting for buyers here to enter, but that's the best entry on the BT cloud. You would trade in the direction of the trend, which is shown by the BT cloud. You enter right when the BT cloud flips, and then you'd usually target like the previous kind of support on the chart. So if we entered off this flip of 60-60, on SPX, just where the support is, like very obvious support right at 5776. That's where I'd be looking to take profit. Like not where we're at now, just that first target, the first price target. So if we miss this BT cloud entry on the flip, which happened a while ago, we can use the golden zone to take an entry after that, which I'll bring that up here. Like this is how we have the golden zone laid out if we're trading to the upside. So we take an impulse from the swing low to the swing high. We look for a pullback into this golden zone, the zero point 0.5 to 0.618. When price breaks back above zero point 0.5, we target the previous high above. So this is would be upside. And after we look at this, I'm going to show an example on how we would do this for the downside. So one thing to note with the golden zone, we want to look for these pin bars. Like I talk about the pin bar a lot. When you dip into these supply and demand zones, when you see that big pin bar push price back up, that shows you have strong buyers entering and vice versa on puts. If you see a big wick coming down like a pin bar from the highs, that shows that there's a lot of selling pressure that's going to push us back to that previous spot. So I look for that a lot when I'm looking at those GZ entries. Like it provides enough momentum to get to that next target. Because if you don't have the pin bar, like we didn't have here on the test of 0.5, we didn't get back up to those previous highs. We rounded off and came back, but this is a lot stronger and vice versa for puts. So if I'm looking here on this chart, like let's say we're looking at a 1 hour structure, we're gonna just clear everything here. Like here, what you would look for if we're looking at today's action, which we didn't get an entry here, you would take the high of this wave and draw it kind of to the lows. And then you look for that back test of that 0.5. So if this is the impulse wave up, tomorrow, let's say we bounce here into here, like we would take our entry in this zone if that's where price rejects. So like price would come back up here, retest this zone. If we see a pin bar coming in from the highs, then we're going to target that previous low on a rejection. I'll put another example here. I think we have one. This was from Monday. So if you take that GZ, we take the high of that wave where the BT cloud flipped, you draw it to that low. So we have our swing high here. We draw it to the swing low, and then you look for that retest here. If you get matching highs, you enter in that candle breakdown. So this is where you would be kind of looking for an entry. So we're not taking our entry on 0 DT on the 1 hour. I'm going to come down to the 5 and 15 minute to get a better entry. Because this, if we're waiting on this 1 hour, by the time you get confirmation, the move has already happened. Like you're not getting in there. So we would come down to the 15 minute here, look to see what's going on. So if we're not looking here, we can see here when we draw that swing high to that low, price pushed up, and we're getting this pin bar wick from above, causing selling pressure. And how you would set this up for a short position, let's say you enter below 0.5, you put your stop right at that wick high. If that wick high breaks, that invalidates that level we're going higher. And then you target this kind of previous support, you put like a little zone in here. So I'm not trying to target those wick lows. I just draw in a rectangle here from like price consolidated right here. So I'm just going to draw like a zone, and that's what I'm going to try to target on that downside. So when I come in here, I usually look on the 5 minute to take that entry. So I'd be looking for an entry probably after confirmation when that BT cloud starts flipping. Like that's where I would want to look for entry. Like we would adjust our stop, like kind of like that, put it at the highs, and then target that zone below. Still have good risk to reward here. But like in current market conditions, I don't want to just jump in at these highs. I want to wait for that BT cloud to flip and then just ride it to that zone below, which it's somewhere in here. Like that's the conservative target, right where that price consolidated, but you can try to go a little lower, but I would stick with probably the conservative target here. You're going to hit that almost every time. If you're going greedy for like the lows, it's a lot of times you get these rounded bottoms where it stops short. So that's why I like taking that kind of conservative exit. Sometimes it goes through, but this is a lot more consistent when you're targeting that level there than trying to hold for max gains. So this is how we would set it up in the downtrend. And if you look on Discord, this is how you would do it for the uptrend. Same exact thing, just kind of inverted. You look for that pin bar, but you look at the pin bar, let's say you see it on the 15 here, it's coming from the highs, like the pin bar. Like so you do want to toggle these time frames as well, like to get a clear picture. Like don't just sit and stare at the 5 the whole time. Like toggle through, look at the 15, look at the 1 hour. Make sure you have a good like kind of candle action, some confirmation here as well. Because I know if you're looking at the 5 here, like that BT cloud flips, but I think this picture on the 15 looks a lot better, seeing that pin bar from above on the 15, more weight to it compared to looking at the 5-minute chart. So that's how we do the GZ setup. Next, I'm going to go through kind of the orb, what we look at here. This, you can use that to establish kind of direction of the trend. Like off open, if you look at the stats, the first 30-minute and NQ candle will determine the trend almost 82% of the time, like that first 30-minute candle. So this orb has a lot of weight to it. This is, I looked back almost 10 years, like historical data set, and they came out to 82% of the time. When you break that opening range, that's the trend for the rest of the day. Like if we break it to the downside, the trend's going to be down. And so I like looking at that for like kind of confirmation. Like if we're looking today, let's say we have our 5-minute candle, right? We're looking at the 945 orb for an entry here. So we would take that orb low and the orb high from the first 15 minutes. So I get a lot of questions of when I'm going to use 15 minutes, when I'm going to use 30 minutes. If we're within the range of Friday, like if we haven't gapped out of Friday's closing range from 12:30 to 4, I'm going to keep that 15-minute orb. If we open outside of this range from the previous day, then I'm going to use 30 minutes. But I get asked that question a lot. That's just what I use to determine if I'm going to use 15-minute orb or 30-minute orb. So if we're looking here, we take that 945 is what we have data up to. We mark the low, we mark the high. We can look at this here, like where we have our orb high, we can write it in here, like our orb high at this level, we can write our orb low here. And then we basically, if this breaks, it triggers a breakout to the upside. If this breaks down, it triggers a breakdown lower. So here's something we can add that in with the golden zone as well. Like if we want to tie this in, let's say we're in a downtrend. Now we want to find the GZ entry downside. I do believe we had one single GZ entry here. If you take that high of this wave to the low, we back tested here, and that's where we rejected right after it dipped into that golden zone to continue down. So there are some golden zones. Sometimes you might only see one per day, but there usually you can find it. Like you just mark that high to the low, and we're retesting orb that adds more confluence to the trade if you're looking downside. So today, if we were looking at the overall trend based off the strategy, it was down. Then we mark our orb. Our orb broke down. If we're not taking that breakdown right after the orb low, we want a retest of the golden zone to look for continuation. And then we would look at that kind of when we get the pin bar off the 0.5 for an entry. The one thing I was looking at here, so what I like to do is look at the 1 hour levels. We actually didn't have any levels below that. I only have one level marked. You'd have to come to the daily here to find some better levels, just because this area where we're at in here, we haven't tested any of these levels since pretty much September of last year. So we're kind of just re-exploring these same levels we retested of summer last year. That's why I always say use 1 hour levels, but if you're looking at the 1 hour, you really don't have any levels to see on the chart unless you go way back here to mark some levels there. So I've been using at least where we're at on this chart, where we just are kind of in open waters. You got to mark these levels from way back, like over a year ago, and see how we react when we test them. So that's how we would pair if you're looking orb with the GZ for a downside trade. So here, another thing I'd be looking at, just going off our strategy here, we're looking, so those are our core setups. We're looking at like the GZ, orb, and BT cloud for direction of the trend. Some other things I like to look at too is if we do find buyers, let's say we're taking that wave high to here, right? And we want to look at that 0.5, I might take an upside trade into that 0.5 on a reversal. So we're still looking at the downside golden zone since we're in a downtrend, but I'm trading the upside into that 0.5 is what I'm looking for. So like what I would look for here, if we're trading upside, like we're looking at this structure here, like nice trend. We're testing, we've rejected this high multiple times. I'm going to look for a break of this structure upside to retest that 0.5 on a counter trend trade to the upside. So these are quicker trades. We're not going with the trend, but we're looking for just a quick move up to that 0.5 before continuation back down. And what I use there for like an entry, if I'm looking there, like that is something I would be looking this structure here, a break, and then even today's trade, we broke the BT Cloud upside, but we rejected this previous high. So I'm looking for an entry off the retest if that holds. Like since we're in a strong downtrend, I'm not looking to just take this beat to cloud flip because if you look overall trend, we're still down, right? So we can't be as aggressive as before on taking these flips to the upside until we get some confirmation. So I'm looking, we rejected that previous high. I drew in that GZ up to the upside on this smaller wave. And if that holds, I'm looking for an entry right there when it retests and bounces and just playing that up to the previous high. So just scalping a small move back up. So that's how I look to trade to the upside while we're in a downtrend. Just a break of structure, a retest to 0.5, and looking for the continuation to that previous high. So the main reason I like this setup a lot is let's say we enter here and we're targeting that previous high. Our stop is tight, like it's right there. So our risk to reward model is really good here. Like you have a very tight stop, it invalidates below that level and a lot more room upside. If that breaks, our risk to reward is significantly higher as well. So I just like trading this kind of setup here, like with that tighter stop. I know a couple of our trades did get stopped out tight, but I'm going to keep that stop as it is, just because that's what the system says. Like that 0.618, it doesn't hold. I shouldn't be in the trade because that's how the GZ setup works here. Vice versa, if we're looking for puts, so we were taking that upside. If we get a reject back in this zone here, we can look downside into that zone again, that 56, 55, 67 as well. So like I want to trade this upside move, but if we reject here, let's say the cloud flip green, right? And then it flips red. Like this, we weren't able to take the flip red because we gapped down overnight. But if we come in here, test this, and then reject, we can take the BT Cloud flip back red to those previous lows there. So question, how do we incorporate this into TOS? I can get a script ready. I'll DM you. Are you able to input like a script? I can DM you like a code for the script if you want to put that in, but I can send that to you as well. Here for strike to pick, we can go over SPX and then look at NDX as well. So now that we have our setup, you still have to know the right contracts to play because if you're trading the setup and you go too far over the money, you're not going to make any gains. Even today, I think we took a trade in the morning, we got a $1.50 move up, but our premiums were losing value. So you have to make sure you're getting a good value on the premiums so that move up is going to give you what you want, like 50 or 60%. Because if you take an entry, see the chart moving, but the contracts are not a good value, you're not going to make any money on the trade. Like I've seen some people like they'll take puts on like a highly speculative name, like let's say it's one of those biotechs that's up 100%. They think they can just take puts, it's going to zero, right? I've seen it go down 50%, but those puts are down 90% just because you got to look at like the IV on the contracts, what the delta and gamma are. Like, let's say the IV is like 300%. You get a 10% move down on the stock. It's not going to affect premiums too much there. So here I'm going to pull up the strike to pick. This is in Discord. You can look at the channel here. So this is if we're trading. Probably, I would say SPX are like one of our momentum names. Like the key things here, so IV under 45%. This was years ago. Like when I made this, you're probably not going to find anything with IV under 45%. I'd probably change this to IV under about like 85% under 100%. Because if you pull up some premiums now, like let's say we want to trade Disney, just looking at the, so that IV is low, but like I would adjust this based off what VIX is at. If VIX is under 20, then these work perfect. But with VIX at 28 now, a lot of these are not going to be at that value. So that's why we've been kind of waiting towards close, like power hour before we're taking a position, just because what you look for a delta, the key spots here is a delta of zero point 0.2. And like, let's say on if we're trading SPX, you want premiums around 2.00. This is almost impossible to find with VIX at 28. If VIX is under 20, you find this all day, every day. Delta under 0.2, premiums around 2. Like right now with VIX at 28, your delta of 0.2 probably has these premiums around 5 or 6. So you need a lot bigger move with that low delta still to get profit. That's why if you've noticed some of the trades that we used to get like 50, 60%, we used to get like 100% quick on these GZ setups on NDX, but now with premiums elevated, like now us spending 600 for something with 0.2 delta, that move is only going to give us like 20 or 30%. I did see some messages like downside with a few people playing puts, and you're just not getting that huge, massive gain that you would get with low delta and cheaper premiums. So this year we make some modifications with VIX up, but really we want to time these entries where we're getting a big move, which is why since we don't have this, I haven't really been trading too much my personal account on NDX. I used to take 20 to 30 contracts at a time on these GZ setups. Now I'm doing just one or two because we're spending so much in premiums for us with a small delta. Like on NDX, we're looking for a zero point 0.3 delta with premiums around 20. You can find that probably in the last 30 minutes, last hour if we're lucky, but like anything before that, you're not finding anything close to that range of 0.3 delta and 20. Like I was looking at 0.3 delta was around 5,000 a contract up until power hour today, which that means you're still getting the same move. The change in price is still going to give you the same with Delta. Delta's like for every $1 move in price, your contract moves by zero point 0.2. So it decreases the value of what you're getting on those premiums, which is why I've been saying like with VIX elevated, we just want to be cautious here until this happens. Once we get Delta here with premiums around here, that's when our account's gonna grow significantly. Like it's coming soon, but once that we get that VIX below 20, we're gonna find these all day, zero point 0.2 delta, premiums around 2, and we'll be able to take these small like moves up to that previous high and get like 80, 90%. We can go aggressive. Like that's where the runs happen. We just gotta be kind of cautious now. Even downside, like with VIX so high, it's just the value is not worth some of these trades like until later in the day. So like this setup here, let's say we're going to the upside, VIX is at 28. If we get a push up on SPX into this 56.76 level, VIX is probably dropping down to like 26 a few percent, which is gonna make our contracts lose value quicker. IV's going down. And if we're not getting a big pop, like igniting candle, we're just going to slowly lose value on our premiums, even if price goes up here. Like, unless it goes deep in the money, we're just going to bleed out even on an uptrend. So that's why we're going to be careful, just time our moves right. And I've been using the 5 minute, like previously, if we're in a strong uptrend, we can time these moves, come down to the 3 and 1, get a early entry on a flip. But this hasn't been working out recently. Like we used to be able to time these entries right as the BT Cloud was flipping on the 3, come to the 5. But if you look here on the 5, there's a lot of rejects here. So I've been waiting. Now I'm waiting for that kind of confirmation for both directions, a BT Cloud flip in either direction before I take a entry, only because of that value on the delta is too high. The premiums are too high versus the delta value. So the script for TOS, I'm gonna get it coded and I'm just gonna post a link to it in the chat for the BT Cloud. And then everybody on Thinkorswim will have it there. Now we can go through, if anybody's got any questions, we can go through any questions and answers, questions about the setup. I did go through a little fast there. If anybody wants, like we could pull up a chart, look at another example as well if you think we're close to that GZ spot on a momentum name. Just make sure everybody is on mute now, which I think you can unmute yourself if you want to ask any questions.
Chris, I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Uh, what's the best way to select the time frame when you draw the Fibonacci levels? Like I'm not. Do you take the like the 1 hour, the when you select the top and the down, like is it on a 1 hour time frame, like a daily time frame, a 15-minute time frame? I'm not sure about that.
So I can go through. So what I like to look, let's say we're in a big downtrend, right? I look at the major level on the daily. I did like this level previously, but we did fail through this 5630, like our previous high from August. We rejected there, came back. So I look at this on the big picture just as like kind of levels. Like if we're looking downside, right? We're in this like open area. We have some resistance here. These fib levels are very kind of strong. Like if you set it up off some other parts on the chart, you can see we bounce like right off that kind of 0.5 previously. So that's why I like to look at that for like the big picture. Let's say we're looking for the market to bounce. It's either 0.5 or 0.618 almost every time on these kind of pullbacks of the waves are higher. But when we're trading zero DTE, what I like to look for kind of 5 minute structure. So like you can use these BT clouds as the waves and like take the high of that wave and kind of mark it to the low. And then that's the target. So here, since we did open with a gap down, you can use that wave there and just draw it like this on the 5. And that's kind of how we're looking for targets. So like we had this one here, this small wave down, right? When we came down, it tested this spot, and that's where we found buyers and pushed up. So that's where I would mark the GZ on the 5 if we're looking for like a zero DT continuation entry. And you can see here, I think this was actually right at VWAP as well. So like this, I just toggle on and off VWAP just as like a level. And we had confluence here, it dipped into 0.5 and immediately kind of rejected back down. So that's how I look at it for trade, how we trade with zero DT, just the 5 minute waves. Like we draw it off that wave. Where did we find buyers and bounce? Then I can put that GZ in and see how price reacts to that level.
Thanks.
Hi, Chris. This is Abdul. Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Yeah. Thanks. Actually, this is very helpful. I just wanted to check with you actually, in terms of like actually messaging when you take a trade. It's really helpful actually the voice because actually I kind of missed the trade today because it wasn't like I thought that the challenge was gonna be like, just cash. And then you took a trade that was super quick and actually voice, because I'm in voice with you pretty much like all day. Try to learn and find these kind of trades. Will be helpful to have them in the voice.
Yeah, so that's my plan is to stay in the voice. I think voice helps a lot for those trades, especially here. Like this, I really was planning to call it a day, but then when I saw us push up and pull them back, I wanted to mark this same thing we were talking about the 5 minute structure, like this GZ. It's like, wow, we're pushing up. I wonder if this is gonna hold here. So I put that in. I noticed price, big candle down, and it just stopped right at 0.5, right? When I saw it stop at 0.5 exactly, then I looked in to see how price was reacting and just, I was going to take this trade like there. I wanted to target a little higher, but I took the kind of safe way here. So like here, we took that here, and then we're targeting like that kind of high, and the stop is so tight, like we're not going to lose much on those premiums if we get stopped out. So I like that trade towards the end of the day off the
There is a
five.
way actually to implement the trading view into Webull, like actually can do like the risk reward that you're doing right now on trading view, do the stop loss and then take the profit as well? Or, I don't know.
So I know when I do when you have an order open, there's like I usually sometimes put in the take profit stop loss that you know how there's a button that says
Right, right,
like
right.
take profit. It does tell you how much you'll make and how much you'll lose based off the stop. Like, but it's not like this where it's just the risk to reward kind of
Mhm.
ratio.
Got it. Thanks.
Like that's I just saw that like 5 minute if you see price a big can like momentum can and then it just stops like right at a major fib level, then I'm gonna be looking to take that kind of to the upside, just put the stop at 0.618 like just below, and then try to ride that up to the top of the trend. So I know I took like the 5.25. Like when it's bouncing in here, it did go up to 9, but then it dropped to like 3, then it was at 6. Like it's good, I think, just to put in your profit target, what you're good at. Like previously, we were probably looking for a retest of these highs, like this little zone here, but that's just in current market conditions. We have to set a closer price target, I think, until we get that established trend. Like if we're on the 5 minute, normally I'll draw in a box like this, and we're hitting that box every time. Like off of GZ, we're gonna hit this gray box every trade if we're in an uptrend. But since we're in this strong downtrend, I'm making it a little bit like less greedy and targeting a lot closer level.
But I also have another question. Basically, if it's a downtrend, why we're not using like buying puts at the moment? Like it's intraday anyway. There's a lot of price action. There is a lot of movement to ride it into the downside. If we can capitalize on that at the moment, at this current market condition.
So I know my personal thing, I've been trying to at least for the challenge, wait for that 5 minute BT cloud to flip for the entry, which since we gapped down overnight, we never got the back flip. But I did see just reviewing back, there was one GZ entry here. Like if you took that kind of what we were talking about earlier, where if you mark the 15-minute orb from those candles,
Mhm.
we retested. That would have been a nice, I didn't get that entry, but that's based off the setup. That was the one entry today to take. But I know I was kind of focused on, I want to wait for a BT Cloud flip before I take a trade. Just kind of had a bias here, but it does work for the downside like this. Like if you mark it and then you can look to take that entry.
Got it.
Yep. Hey, Chris, I'm using E-Trade. Uh, do you think I should use like Trading View for charting? Uh, More indicators.
So I have a E-Trade account too. Their charts are nice. I just on the computer. It's nice like just to see everything like a bigger picture. Like I like having the indicators and being able to like take the fib tool and just quickly draw in the fib like when I need to. Because I don't know if you use like their platform, if you can do that quick. I just like the responsiveness for drawing in the fibs. Like I can just quickly put it like a trend. Some of the platforms on mobile are hard to draw these like trend lines in, right? If you're looking at like a trend line and the
Yeah.
highs, like it takes a little while, which is why I like using just the desktop because I can just even mobile for trading me, it's really easy to manually draw in like stuff that you need.
Got it. Okay.
But yeah, it's up to you, like if you want to or
Right.
not. It's just for me personally, it's takes a while for me to draw in the
Yeah.
indicators and stuff. Like if I'm doing a manual fib tool, if I'm using like E-Trade or another broker, it takes a while to set it up.
Yep. Gotcha. Thanks.
Hey Chris, I have a question. So I'm actually curious that you had mentioned something just a while ago about sort of missing that entry, the earlier entry today, just given on sort of just an advice that you had going into today. I'd love to just kind of hear you sort of speak a little bit on sort of just from your time of trading, sort of what have you found helpful to sort of check your biases when you go into a trading day or as you're experiencing a trading day?
So I know personally, I've been trading. Took my first trade in 2008. Have traded actively since 2015. But I know where my strengths are, and I know when I can make money, and it's when those trends flip. So like while we're trending like this down, I'm sizing very light, like because I know it's not my strength, like trading these kind of downside. If this was flipped, I'd be taking these easily. It's just I don't see it till after the fact, trading the downside, and I'm looking for those kind of reversals back up. So I just know when I should size light, and I'm just gonna. I think we're close to that point where we're gonna get that kind of reversal, the big reversal, and get one of those strong trends to the upside. And I'm just really just waiting for that, being cautious now because I know when that reversal happens, we're gonna make a lot of money once it happens. And it's the downtrends don't last long. You just look back at the weekly, you can look back at the monthly, like where the downtrends are, it's not much. So I'm just kind of waiting. We've been in for 3 weeks in this downtrend. I'm just being patient. And I know once that trend flips, that's where we're gonna make a lot of money.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm just mostly wanted to just resonate because from my own experience as well, it's often kind of hard to sort of navigate, these kind of environments that are a lot more volatile, and it's helpful to kind of just hear from your experience. It's just sizing light and then sort of just testing the waters, and then once it gets to something you like more, then you go heavy.
I think the big thing too with our strategy, like at least with the strategy I have here, like we say which strike to pick. You look at the delta and the price. We're not getting anything close to this, like 2.0 premiums with zero point 0.2 delta because VIX is so high. So like it affects the chart when you put the risk to reward, like when you put the long position here to here, like that's different than options. With VIX elevated, this is kind of skewed. Like you're making a lot less profit on those moves because VIX is so high. Like your delta, your zero point 0.2 delta means every dollar you're going up 0.2 in your premiums. If you're paying 6 now instead of 2, and it's only going up 0.2 for every dollar, you're making the profit's going to be significantly less. And you have other kind of things pushing against you. So that's the main thing I'm waiting for. Once this happens, zero point 0.2 delta and 2.0 and 0.3 delta, like 20 on NDX, we can make a lot off these 5-minute structure moves. It's just the risk to reward too. It's not worth it, I think, to trade. Like I'm not going to put 30K into NDX when the risk to reward is only going to give like 20 or 30% to that previous high.
Hey,
Gotcha. Thank you
Chris,
so much.
do you have the
So this is
ability to go back
probably
to
a
a
dumb
specific day?
question. Sorry.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you say uh, BT cloud flip or a break in structure, can you explain it a little bit more? Does that mean just a change in color from red to green or green to red, or how do we interpret that?
So what I'd be looking at here, let's look at kind of QQQ here. So our BT Cloud, I'm looking at the 5-minute, right? The 5-minute structure here. I'd be looking for this green flip. Like that's the first thing. Like a break of structure would be a break of the previous resistance that we had. So like let's say this is like our kind of trend, something like that. Like where did price, if we're pushing down and push back up, where did it stall at last? So like if we're looking here, the most obvious spot probably would have been, so we're looking here. This is a clear like rejection here. We dipped in like double bottom, but failed to break through this level. So I put my like break of structure above this 477. Today's action, it's not as clear because we never really had one of those bounces like higher lows, lower highs. Like we didn't have like a clear spot. This is the only clear spot I see, this 477.55, that would need a break to kind of flip the trend back upside. So even if this popped here, we're still not above that kind of previous high.
Hey, Chris, do you have the ability to go back to a specific day, such as February 19th?
Let's see. I think there's a way.
Other than like manually scrolling? Well, the reason I ask is I know the point that you're trying to teach on, and that was
This
the
action, like we don't really have it here. I'm gonna scroll back like
February 19th is a day that you had that action. And I don't know if you remember, but the reason I jumped in was that was the day that you had a 200% play. And then the next day, people were like, oh shit, we missed it. And then you had 168% the next day. So February 19th was the first one. And you entered at 12:20 California time.
That was for calls, right?
NDX, no, it was a put.
Puts, let's see if I can find that. So I see 12:30, but I think this is Eastern, so it's
Yeah, so that would have been 3:20 Eastern.
okay. So that was over here then. This when we got this big move down. So we can look at that here. So here's the 5 minute. I think I remember this. Like, yeah, going in, we had that big candle kind of down. So here in the 5 minute, here's our kind of break of structure here where the BT cloud flipped. So it flipped red. That was, I think, the last time I traded puts, but we were able to get in right on that 5 minute BT cloud flip as it was going red. So here's support, right? We have three candles. Break of structure is when it would break below that with the BT cloud flip, and that's the entry for puts there.
So that one you bought the contracts at 1200 and entered at 30 or exited at 3700.
Yeah, that we had a nice pot, like big impulse candle down after this kind of structure
It was
broke.
a 7-minute trade too.
Yeah, I think that was near close there where it pushed down and then we popped and then big wave. But that's when I'm looking for like a downside trade. I really that entry was right when the BT cloud flipped. That's what I want to see in the five for an entry, which since we got down, we didn't have it today. Just that one GZ at VWAP, which would have been a nice entry there. But I know I had like a little bit of a bias on that trade. I wasn't looking clearly at that kind of downside because I was waiting for that BT cloud flip. Like that's what on the challenge. I think if we enter on the 5 minute BT cloud flip, we're gonna make a good amount of money. Because if you just scroll back on the chart, look at the 5 minute BT cloud, like you're getting these extended waves for good several hours when the BT cloud flips. So if we wait for that BT cloud to flip, we're gonna get like a nice kind of steady trend, at least for 2 to 3 hours. Like just looking back historically on the chart. A question on how to change the candles to white. If you go to more settings, you can set the colors here of what you want the candles to be. I think it's symbol, like body, borders. You can set that. Mine, I just put like kind of hollow, like the body has one color, and I think the other one you just can see through. Going back to the question for break of structure, just looking at the 5 minute here, if we're playing upside, this blue line at 475.40 would be our break of structure, like market structure shift. That high's got to break, and then we can kind of flip the trend to the upside. So that's how I just mark it. Just the 5 minute waves. We stopped here. I'm marking that high, and that's the level that needs to break to see kind of continuation. So the question about VWAP, this is just the standard high-low close here for the session. Like it's pretty much stays the same. It's unified across all time frames here.
What's your thoughts on the first 30 minutes of trading? Like when the market opens?
For me personally, I've found it better just to wait. Like, let's get a more established structure. I like to wait for that at least 15 minutes so I can mark the opening range, like high and lows. just to have some better levels to trade off of. Because at the open, like you could see it pop off the open, and then it sells back down. I want to just get the volatility, the opening volatility out of the way first before I look for a trade using the GZ or orb. I used to trade the open a lot, like right off the open, like 931, 932. But that was probably back after COVID, even before COVID, like when we had these steady trends to the upside. Now it's very volatile, even with big stuff. Like it's the swings are too wide in both directions I think, to take something really early, unless it's like a momentum name breaking out with a strong catalyst. So question about what strike to choose. So like, let's say we're taking the QQQ, that 5 minute. This is earlier in the day. We're taking that GZ entry off the 0.5. So we're entering off this, like, let's say we're entering right around this 472. If the previous high is right around 475, that's where I would take my strike if I can. So like if we're entering 472, I want my strike gonna go in the money into resistance. So like the next resistance is my target. So it'd be 475 if we were trading QQQ off the GZ. But this I wouldn't take near close, a lot weaker. Like that, you probably have to do like a 473 or something lower towards the end of the day.
And Chris, if the VWAP is below that, 475, which resistance do you consider as your target, like price target, the VWAP or the 475.54?
If VWAP's like a little bit below, I'm always going to go
Yep.
for the VWAP first, because if you've seen like VWAP, like even here, like we came down,
Mhm.
VWAP's like a brick wall a lot of times. It hits it and then always kind of either rejects, on vice versa, both sides. If VWAP's below, like, and we see it around 0.5, a lot of times you're going to see the reversal happen right at that confluence space. So I'm going to go for VWAP if VWAP is closer every time.
Okay, sure. Thank you. And do you also use anchored VWAP for any pivots?
Just the default, the high low to
Okay.
close, no anchored for me.
Okay, sure. Thanks.
So there was a question, the Rivian trade. I liked where we were at previously. We were above that 1130 spot. Like I liked the lows that held here. We're at a major trend line going back to April of last year. Wave up, down. This is kind of the third wave testing. We were pushing before the market sold off heavy. We got a break of structure to the upside, but we did get a big rejection right at 1165. Like here, we had that hammer down. Like we broke that previous resistance, but it wicked and pushed back down to lows, which is probably because of the overall market as well. If the overall market is pushing down 4%, it's going to be hard for a name like Rivian to push, but it's held a lot better than the overall market. It was up 4% earlier in the day. I just like the strength that was going into it while the overall market is weak. So when the overall market does reverse, these tickers that were showing more strength while it's weak are usually the ones that run the most compared to the other stocks. So if Nvidia is a lot stronger than Amazon, when we do reverse in the market, usually that one that's stronger is going to move bigger on those uptrend days.
Chris, how do you estimate the potential of the trades? So, for example, I've seen you on X, you have said it's a 10,000% trade or a 5,000% trade. How do you estimate that?
Like how are you talking, like position sizing into the trade?
No, so the profit percentage. At times you have mentioned that this could be a potentially 5x trade or a 10x trade. Uh, how do you estimate that?
So that if we're going to strike the pick, I'm looking at the delta and like kind of the price target at expiration based off the current value of the premium. So like we're in here, if premiums are lower at this force, I look at this like price target and I subtract that from the premium. And that's kind of what I look at. Like it's going to give 2x or 3x. Like if we hit the price target, I subtract that from what we paid, and like that's what the premium is going to be worth. So that's how I kind of determine what level. So like let's say Rivian hits 13. So like if you're in the 12, those premiums are going to be 1.00 at expiration. Like that's if you hold that all the way to the end. We hit 13 at the bell Friday. And then we would look at what we paid 20 cents. So we just divide that by the one and we're up 400, 500% if we hit 13 by Friday's close.
Yeah. So on the same example, for example, Rivian, are you targeting the previous resistance? So the previous high, is that how you are deciding what the potential could be?
So I was looking here, like where do we have kind of like our strong support slash resistance? It's right around this kind of 13. Like there's a little zone in here. That's what I'm targeting. Like you see price held here for support, rejected here as resistance. So it's this little kind of zone in here. I'll adjust that down as well. Like right up in here, like from like 1250 up to that like 1340. So like this zone, you can see here, if we're bouncing here, market reverses off this spot of the trend. The next level up I'm looking for is just under that 13, where you can see it held here and we consolidated before a move happens. So strong, where the strongest reaction on the chart is at.
Understood. Thank you.
Which you can kind of see here on the volume profile. If you shrink it down, like we have very strong demand right under this 11 level, and then there's like a void in the profile. Like that means you don't need much volume to get to that kind of next level up, which is a little bit above 13. So if we get any kind of momentum, this can shoot up quick to that next level just because there's like this void like decreasing. So it takes all your buys and sells and kind of puts them based off levels. You see there's not much action in here. That means a little bit of momentum, boom, we're right there at 13. This volume profile that I toggled on and off, I like looking at it kind of daily. You can just see where, if you scroll back on the chart, like where is the strongest volume at compared to like the levels. So if we're looking for like a strong level, just look at kind of areas of confluence on here. Like you just scroll back on the chart, like where do we find a lot of buyers? It was on this 480 spot QQQ. Then the strongest support would be right around this 436 downside. Like you can look at the same on SPY, just scroll back, like look at the big picture and see like where the strongest levels are. We see there's a level here right around like 556, like one, you can mark those like 568, very strong here at 540. If we do drop down, like that's potential where we would find buyers, like these strong zones that come from the volume profile. Like we saw increase, there's probably a lot of dark pool activity around that 540 level on SPY. Which if you're looking at like, let's say you're like a big fund that's managing billions, they don't care what's happening intraday. They just have levels. Like we want to buy a good level and take that. Like they're not trading any kind of indicators, just levels, like support and resistance, sometimes looking at the RSI. So like we get to 540, price is, let's say the RSI is heavily oversold at like 20. You go to your like fund manager, hey, I want to place a order on this. They'll give you the compliance will let you take that trade. Like they'll allow you to take that 540 with size. Any other questions we have in?
No, so far. I mean, we're looking for to make some money here.
So I know if you do scroll back on the share success, like we're gonna make a lot of money once the VIX comes down some. That's just what we're waiting for, based off my setup. But I'm expecting that to happen very soon, where we're gonna be able to capitalize on that, and that's when our account's gonna grow really quick. Once that VIX drops below 20, I think our account probably can go from 2 to 30K in a few weeks. We're just waiting on those parameters where the delta is good. Like right now, we really have to wait just on our account size. Like there's trades we can take near the open, but you have to spend a lot on those trades. So once we get those like that sweet spot where 0.3 delta is around 20, that's where we're gonna make a lot. And it can be 1 or 2 days we go from 2K to 10K when that happens.
We all hope so.
And Chris, one last question for me. Do you think it's possible to automate the trades or not at this point?
So I was working with a member about automating that with your broker. We're getting close on it. Like we'll probably have to set it up where it's only going to be the indexes by QQQ, but it's being worked on now, like a Python script that's going to allow you to automate the trades with your broker.
Okay, thanks.
So I do see a question in here in the chat. If we miss some trading time during the week, would it be better to miss an hour in the morning or afternoon? I would say the morning. Like a lot of times we're not taking any trades in the morning. It's not going to be till after lunch, just based off how much the premiums are. So it's there. Like I'd probably, if you want to just tune in after lunchtime where we look for one of those kind of trades on the indexes are Spire QQQ. Like in the morning, really, I'm just looking for like a momentum trade to take. Like let's say like China is hot, we have a news catalyst. I'm looking for that kind of orb break a structure to take an entry. But besides that, if where we're at currently, there's going to be no NDX QQQ till probably after like noon, like 1 p.m. Eastern time. If you have any other questions, if you want to post them in Market Talk, I can answer there. I'm gonna end the stream here. It is recorded. I'm gonna share the link in the chat. But any other questions, strategy, what to look for, just post that right in the Market Talk. And just closing out, so in the mornings we do have, I had heard a couple members say like it's Discord fills up. So I do post a Zoom link as well. If you hit the pinned messages in the morning, you'll see it. I pin it every morning, the Discord voice link and the Zoom link. Zoom won't have any audio, but the Discord will. So if you have questions, make sure to hop in the Discord voice. But if you want to see the screen, you can use the Zoom link. That's everything there. Have a good one. I'll see everybody tomorrow before open.